Good morning. This is the public hearing and public meeting of the Committee of the Whole regarding bills numbers 240179, 240180, 240181, 240182, and resolution number 240193. Ms. Longhead, will you please call the roll to take attendance?
Councilmember Squilla. Councilmember Gautier. Councilmember Jones. Councilmember Young. Councilmember Driscoll. Councilmember Lozada. Councilmember Bass. Councilmember Phillips. Councilmember O'Neill. Councilmember Gilmore Richardson. Councilmember Thomas. Councilmember Harity. Councilmember Ahmad. Councilmember Landau. Councilmember Brooks. Councilmember O'Rourke. Council President Johnson.
Here. Thank you. A quorum of the committee is present, and this hearing is now called to order. Ms. Longhead, will you please read the title of the resolutions?
Bill number 240179, an ordinance to adopt the operating budget for fiscal year 2025. Bill number 240180, an ordinance amending Chapter 19-1800 of the Philadelphia Code entitled School Tax Authorization to provide for an increase in the tax that the Board of Education of the School District of Philadelphia is authorized to impose on real estate. In amending Chapter 19-1300 entitled Real Estate Taxes to establish an equivalent reduction in the tax rate for the city real estate tax and making technical changes, all under certain terms and conditions. Bill number 240181, an ordinance to adopt a fiscal year 2025 capital budget. Bill number 240182, an ordinance to adopt a capital program for the 6 fiscal years 2025 through 2030 inclusive. Resolution number 240193, providing for the approval by the Council of the City of Philadelphia of a revised 5-year financial plan for the City of Philadelphia covering fiscal years 2025 through 2029 and incorporating revisions with respect to fiscal year 2024, which is to be submitted by the mayor to the Pennsylvania Intergovernmental Cooperation Authority pursuant to an intergovernmental cooperation agreement by and between the city and the authority.
I also want to note for the record the presence of Councilmember Isaiah Thomas and Councilmember Mark Squilla. Today we will continue the public hearing of the Committee of the Whole to consider the bills read by the clerk that constitute proposed operating and capital spending measures for fiscal year 2025, a capital program and a forward-looking capital plan for fiscal year 2025 through fiscal year 2030. This morning, we will hear testimony from the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer, Office of Human Services, Office of Human Resources, Office of Innovation and Technology, and the Procurement Department. This afternoon, we will hear testimony from Aviation and the Water Department. Ms. Longhead, will you please call the first witness to testify from the administration?
The first person to testify is Camille Duchasset, Chief Administrative Officer.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Just state your name for the record and please begin your testimony.
Good morning. My name is Camille Duchasset. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer for the City of Philadelphia. Good morning, Council President Johnson and members of City Council. I'm pleased to provide the testimony on the Office of the Chief Administrative Officer's fiscal year 2025 operating budget. Joining me today are members of the CAO executive team, Dwayne Gordon, First Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Liana Dragaman, Director of the Philadelphia Service Design Studio, Melissa Andre, Executive Director of the Office of Administrative Review, Shakia Foreman, Employee Ombudsperson, Trevor Day, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer, Tracy Bryant, Deputy Director of Talent and Employee Success, and Sandy Ramos, Program Manager for the SEPTA Key Advantage Program. I am also joined by the commissioners from our cluster departments, LaShonda Tompkins, Acting Procurement Commissioner, James Leonard, Records Commissioner, Mike Zaccagni, Director of the Office of Human Resources, and Melissa Scott, Chief Information Officer responsible for the Office of Innovation and Technology, all of whom will also be providing testimony relative to their respective areas. It is the synergy and partnership of these departments that are essential to the enterprise resource planning of the Chief Administrative Office. The CAO is the backbone of the city government. Our mission is to develop and invest in the city's workforce consistent with EEO principles, equal employment opportunity principles, and the leading practices of human resource management and diversity, equity, and inclusion. We also maintain and improve enterprise and department-specific administrative functions and deliver transformative programs and practices that will result in more efficient, equitable, accessible, and modernized service to city residents and the City of Philadelphia workforce. Marshaling the resources and talent of the CAO, we will continue to embrace technological advancements in enterprise resource planning and human resource best practices to realize the promise to make Philadelphia the safest, cleanest, greenest city in the nation with economic opportunity for all, and to make the City of Philadelphia an employer of choice. In order to sustain and realize the service delivery standards to which we are committed and resolved to provide to our residents, and to realize a model of workplace culture and workforce development, we are reliant on the FY25 budget before you today. FY25 funding will facilitate the continuation of effective management and transformative work of the CAO, examples of which include the groundbreaking Equitable Community Engagement Toolkit, the Employee Protection Workgroup's Interdepartmental Communication Agreement, and the Vendor Disclosure Portal, just to name a few. The workforce development activities of the Office of the Talent and Employee Success, the implementation and management of the SEPTA Key Advantage Program for all city employees, the innovative work resulting from the FY23 and FY24 Operational Transformation Fund cohorts, and the strategic planning around the implementation of the Parker administration's initial executive orders on service delivery improvement and expanding pathways to employment and equitable economic opportunity. Our proposed fiscal year 2025 general fund budget totals $17,244,134 and reflects our continued investment in workforce, enterprise administrative functions, and transformation. Of particular note, this budget will continue to fund the SEPTA Key Advantage Program pilot, allocate both human and financial resources to furthering the work outlined in Executive Orders 224 and 324, and continue CAO's work on current and ongoing projects that leverage technological, digital, and people-centered solutions to streamline administrative workflows and eliminate redundancies. In conclusion, I urge the members of City Council to support this budget proposal, recognizing its pivotal role in maintaining a resilient, responsive, and evolving municipal government. I appreciate your time today, and the CAO team will be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to also note for the record that we will also be taking questions for Office of Information Technology, Procurement, as well, and Human Resources. That's for all the members who want to ask questions for those various departments that fall under the CAO. Just want to let you know that as we go through this morning process. Thank you for your testimony. I just have a couple questions before I turn it over to our members. This is under hiring. Per Executive Order 3-2024, which removes barriers to city employment within 90 days of the order, a CAO must submit a proposed plan to the mayor's office for assessing the universe of current exempt positions. Yesterday was the 90th mark. Yesterday was the 90th mark for the signing of the order. Can you provide council with an update on this requirement, and how will future updates be provided to City Council?
Sure. Thank you for the question. We are happy to partner with City Council in the future to update the benchmarks that are achieved during the implementation of this very important executive order. We did submit yesterday our game plan for assessing the universe of exempt positions to include a timeline of at least initially cataloging all exempt positions and the resources needed to do so.
Okay. Could you also make sure the chair receives a copy?
Absolutely.
And for members as well?
Will do.
The CAO's new service delivery initiative will support implementation of Executive Order 2-2024 2024, the mayor's commitment to making government services more visible, responsive, and effective. The five-year plan narrative cites the CAO will also manage funding to cover the upfront costs of the selected service delivery improvement projects. How will these projects be selected, and how much funding is set aside to cover these upfront costs of service delivery improvement projects?
So my understanding in terms of the funding is that there was slightly over $2.2 million, at least in the first fiscal year, set aside for this very important work. We have had a number of work group conversations. We are partnering with the Office of Policy and Development, as well as the Office of Innovation and Technology, with the CAO, of course, in order to develop not only the time frame, but also the listing of services and the prioritization schedule for how those services will be modified, reviewed and modified to improve service.
And FY24 and the FY25 budget included funding for the SEPTA Key Advantage program, which offers free transit as an employee benefit to the city's workforce. The administration has previously stated that since this is a 2-year pilot program, it is being evaluated to determine how to proceed with the program after FY25. And so I just want to get an idea of how the program is being evaluated and what types of considerations will go into determining if the program will continue. And obviously, as we address the issue of support, funding for mass transportation here in the city of Philadelphia, it's no secret that we're the #1 big city, largest city in the country when it comes to poverty. And so this was an initiative to try to ease the burden, primarily for city workers, to allow them a benefit for transportation to and from work. And so how are we evaluating if such an initiative should be supported moving forward? And do you have a budgetary dollar amount that were actually assessed for the program over the last fiscal year 24? Going into fiscal year 25.
Okay. Again, thank you for the question. I'm also going to ask that Sandy Ramos, our program manager for the SEPTA Key Advantage card, join me at the podium. I will say that we will continue to assess the efficiency and the impact of the SEPTA Key Advantage plan amongst our workforce, to include usage, enrollment percentage, coverage across all the demographic factors in the city of Philadelphia, our workforce, as well as taking into consideration any changes to the costing of that program.
Ms. Ramos, have we tracked data in terms of who's actually utilizing
Good morning.
the benefit? Good morning.
We have. One of the key things as a part of the implementation process was to track whether or not we were rolling this out equitably amongst city employees. And I can sit here and say that we certainly have. Across all of our demographics, age, race, income, we have a very level rollout of the benefit of folks participating. The only area where there is a change is between women and men. Women by far are enrolled more than men are.
Could you provide a copy of your initial assessment
Absolutely.
to the chair for members of council?
Yes.
Okay. This question is for the Office of Human Resources. Just want to get an idea of how we are increasing the diversity of eligible candidates for city jobs, and how does the Office of Human Resources collaborate with the Mayor's Office of Diversity and Inclusion, just to make sure that the City of Philadelphia workforce reflects the city that we live in.
Yes, thank you, Council President. Mike Sicagni, Director of Human Resources for City of Philadelphia. So over the last 4 to 5 years, from 2019 to now, we saw a significant increase in the diversity of new hires coming into the city. I believe it was around 62% in 2019. It's closer now to maybe a little bit more than 72%. we're doing a lot trying to get out into the communities, but we have to do more, and we have to improve our communications, especially with this council. One of the things that I've heard directly, and we've heard directly during the 5-year plan, so we will be partnering more. But we've held a couple, 98 events, I believe, at the local libraries. We've held another 90 or so events partnering with community organizations, various ones, to try to get out into the community. In 2022, our recruiting events, I think we contacted about 800 people. In 2000, oh, go ahead.
Could you state for the record our vacancy rate currently, right now?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
Can you state for the record our vacancy rate?
The vacancy rate right now, and these numbers come from the quarterly manager's report, just so that we know we're drawing. For the entire city, it's probably still hovering around 20%, and that includes departments that do not report to the mayor. I'd have to look at that. I don't remember exactly, and it's probably maybe a little bit less for departments reporting to the mayor. One of the things, and I'll finish up on some of the activities that we've done, but one of the things that we've seen also in calendar year 2023 was the first year we were actually in positive numbers in the last 4 years for hiring as opposed to attrition. So we got hit big time during the pandemic. There was a very slow hiring year that first year of the pandemic, and it was slowed throughout the pandemic, so we kind of got behind. But last year, we had significantly more employees hired than left. As to getting back to some of the recruitment efforts that we are trying to do out in the community, we had about 800 contacts with applicants in 2022. I believe it was close to 2,800 in 2023. So we are trying to get out into the communities, partnering with local community groups, going out to libraries. We need to do more around that and also communicate better.
Do we have a media, public relations strategy plan for community engagement and recruitment for these vacant positions?
So what we have starting this year is we have a promotional campaign that is going to focus on the City of Philadelphia as an employer of choice, and I mentioned some of this during the 5-year testimony. We have a consultant that we brought on board who's going to work with us, actually has been doing some work on getting information around certain job families. So we're looking to build that and to build the strategy with that organization that we're going to basically take to both the airways, social media, print. We're going to cover the full gambit as much as we can. And we hope to continue that as we go into the next fiscal year. So one of the things I think we looked at is we needed more capacity and we needed more competencies in that area, so we brought somebody on board. We also stood up for the first time in OHR's history a communications group, internal. So we have a couple of people that's fielding, that's basically staffing a communications office that is also going to be assisting with helping us construct and get communication out, both to the communities and elsewhere.
Bless you. I just want to also say, before I turn it over to my colleagues, just recommend possibly partnering with council members, right? Because they're out and about in the community, engaging in a variety of different activities as relates to providing support and resources to their constituents. And so that may be a good opportunity to collaborate to help get the word out and really touch the people most in need by being out in the streets. What obstacles have you seen in terms of hiring individuals? Where have you run into? Is there any data that shows that, well, these are the things we're running into in terms of individuals who are applying for our jobs?
I think one of the main obstacles we're running into, not exclusive to recruitment strategies, but communication in general, is the digital divide, right? And making sure that we are touching our community members and our workforce members that do not have the same easy access to computers or technology. And I will say that I believe the addition of the roving recruitment vehicle, I don't know if we've named it yet, but the RV so that we can partner with City Council, we can partner with a lot of the community organizations that we have already established relationships with. We can get out in person with that vehicle and provide the technology that may not be present in the home for those employees, prospective employees, to be able to apply online, and able to access our services, be able to access the different places where we house our opportunities, our employment opportunities. So we do recognize that there is work to be done to support our communities and reach our workforce, our potential workforce, where they are right now as we build their capacity.
And just to add on the connecting with council, our communications director, Olivia Gillison, our deputy for hiring services, Janine LeBled, and myself, we've had some conversations already about having a better strategy around that so that we can share when we are out there, where we are, and share that with the offices here, because that certainly came across loud and clear that we're not doing enough in that area.
I think we very much recognize the partnership and the value of the partnership with all the city council member offices. You know your communities, you know what events, you sponsor events, and making sure that we are connecting with you in the beginning to ensure that if there's an event that would make sense for us to be present, that we know about it in advance, and that you know what capacity we have to attend those events.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to save the rest of my questions for the next round. The chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity.
Thank you, Council President, colleagues. My questions are for the Human Resources, and I know that the councilman already asked this, but could you elaborate a little more? I'd also like to say I was very happy. I listen to KYW all the time in the car, and I've heard the ads that we're promoting now, employment here in the Philadelphia area, and I also seen the ad on Facebook. So I'm very happy about that. But what are the implements to attracting talent to the city of Philadelphia? And I'm sorry, what are the impediments to attracting talent to the city of Philadelphia? And how can we keep the current city employees so that we can avoid further attrition?
Thank you, Councilman. I think we have some of the challenges that every organization under the sun has, is getting people interested in being able to dedicate and make a decision on where they're going. One of the things that we see still is that we get a lot of no-shows. We get a lot of applicants for certain positions. Police officer recruit, for example, correctional officers, those types of positions that every jurisdiction that I've spoken to still has trouble with. And we still get a lot of people who apply, and then when they get contacted for whatever reasons, and a lot of this is anecdotal, we've actually tried to reach out to correctional officer applicants and get feedback, but they're not showing up for an orientation. They're not taking time to respond to one of our surveys, so it is at times difficult to get that. So there are some of the challenges that we do see. I think one of the things that makes me optimistic is the fact that in 2023, for the first time, we've hired more people, and we've hired a lot of people in 2023. I think we may be turning a corner. Police will talk about some of their recruitment efforts when they're here. I think they've done a good job partnering with the state to sort of change some of the hurdles that police officer recruits have to go through. I think they're seeing more people attend. They're still having a large no-show rate, but I think that's coming down. I also think in the retention area, we're looking at things, we're going through the last pieces of a pay survey that we've done. First time we've done a wide pay survey in a long time. We do individual pay surveys on a regular basis. Our hiring service team's always doing maintenance. But this is the first time we had a concerted effort to really look at it more holistically. We have some results from that. We're going through that now. I think some of the pieces that Marsha Green Jones, who is our deputy for benefits, really focuses on employee wellness and creating an environment where we provide very good benefits. During that pay survey, it wasn't quantitative data, but we got qualitative data that we check a lot of the boxes when it comes to benefits and being competitive from the standpoint of benefits. And I think one of the things from a recruitment standpoint, and I do truly believe this, I think working for government, working for the city, and I've worked here for a while now, I think it has a purpose. And I think that there are people, especially younger people, that are also looking for employment with a purpose. And that's some of the messaging that we want to do as we move our campaign out to really talk about what is it that's in the city, that we have good jobs, good pay, we have good benefits, but we also provide you with a job that's going to provide a purpose. Sorry.
I would point out that there are a couple of other things that we are affirmatively trying to work toward improving. The vast majority of the positions that we have some struggle with in terms of recruitment and retention are in the civil service. And that process for getting online and filling out an application that has many, many questions in it, and some of the questions you're not quite sure how to answer, we are working diligently to streamline that application process. I at least anecdotally, there was some suggestion that the nature of filling out a fairly lengthy application is a deterrent to people actually finishing it and going all the way through the application process. And then you compound that sometimes with not being very clear on what the qualifications are for the position. And if we're creating, very much consistent with the mayor's, one of her very first executive orders, creating additional pathways for qualification to the many positions that we have in the city of Philadelphia. That assessment that is ongoing now across both civil service positions and exempt positions to determine where we have other opportunities to assess experience, credentialing that is other than a degree will give us, I believe, better outcomes in terms of recruitment.
Okay, and just my last question is, what's the length of time, the wait time to be called from application to interview?
So, Councilman, what we try to track is what we call hiring time. So once we get the first request from a department for a specific position, the length of time someone can be called varies because our eligible lists can last anywhere from 1 to 2 years. So for example, if I use laborers, we'll have a significant amount of applicants on that list. Streets Department goes through their hiring. They may hire, well, they'll be hiring more this year, but usually a couple hundred laborers during the year. That list stays active till the next year. So there could be. The one thing that we want to do, though, is we want to have more engagement when people are on the list to say, hey, we know you're there. We're actually looking at how we change or perhaps a new applicant tracking system that can help us do that and engage with candidates. We're actually going through vendor meetings now to look at how we can improve that area, as Camille said. So we're looking at those pieces. So that's one of the things that we're really focusing on also from the standpoint. Our time to hire is right now, it's probably about 100 days on average. It takes us about 35 days to create an eligible list. So that's usually a pretty quick turnaround. But again, as I've said before in council chambers, we've got a bifurcated system. So we have to do work in OHR, and then we have to do work at the department level in doing interviews. And the rule of thumb for governmental agencies is probably anywhere between 90 and 100, and we're right about there right now. And that's not saying we're happy with that. We want to continue to improve upon that, but just to give some context of that piece.
Yeah, I know my time's up, and I'm good. But yeah, just from experience, my son applied for paramedic, and I know that's a specialized thing, so it takes a little longer. But by the time they got back to him, he had already been offered a better job, better paying job at Einstein Hospital as an EMT in the emergency room. So just trying to be very aware of how much time we're taking between the process so that we can actually get some of these people before they find other jobs. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. And just as a reminder for members, just please speak into the microphone for the record. I want to also note for the record the presence of Councilmember Kendra Brooks, Councilmember Anthony Phillips, and Councilmember Mike Driscoll. The chair recognizes Councilmember Nicholas O'Rourke.
Thank you, Council President. And good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you. Thank you for being here to talk with us about some of the city government's key administrative functions. I know for many residents and many city employees, government gets a bad rap for not working for the people. But I've been really excited to learn about some of the projects that the Office of CAO has done over the last administration to make government more efficient and equitable. I want to ask about a couple of those programs today. Some have already been brought up. First, let's talk about the SEPTA Key Advantage program.
Sure.
From my understanding, this was a pilot program funded for 2 years, which provides free transit to all city employees as an employment benefit. I'm a big fan of making Philly, with my council president as well, a more accessible city to get around, including for our employees. I'm sure this makes for a great sales pitch to get folks to work for the city as well. Does the administration intend to continue the SEPTA Key Advantage program beyond the 2-year pilot phase to make it a permanent program?
I think we'll continue to review the information that we have, the data that we have on enrollment, usage. Every 6 months, there is a reevaluation of the costing of that program. But in consideration of all of those things, there will be a decision made at the conclusion of the pilot. Certainly, we absolutely recognize the value of it, because at the end of the day, what we want to do is create a culture where our workforce realizes increased value in their compensation package, and this is one of those things that does that.
Yeah.
So I think the intention there is to make sure that we're just making a sound decision, being good stewards of the city residents' funds, money, and at that point make a decision towards the end of the pilot in 2025.
In that same spirit, I mean, I agree. I think it would be great in terms of getting folks to appreciate what they actually have. In fact, if we're requiring a full return to work policy, I think it makes sense to offer employees free transit to make that a situation, an easy transition. But that's neither here nor there. Thank you for the point. When the program was being evaluated, how is the CEO defining success when you're looking at that data? Given all the different evaluation criteria, how is the city defining or determining whether or not the thing is working?
I'm sorry, if you can repeat the question.
Yeah, how do you know if the pilot is actually working? Like if you're looking at data to kind of ascertain whether or not to make it permanent, there's a lot of evaluation out there.
Sure.
Kind of how are you knowing that? How are you defining that?
So one of the things that we really would like to be able to show, one of the ways in which we determine that there's value in it is participation. It's in enrollment and its use, right? When we first started, there was a very significant push on making sure that we had as many employees that are eligible enroll in the program. And I think we've done that successfully. And we have a fairly significant percentage of our employees who are eligible enrolled in the program. As a matter of fact, we have the highest percentage of the large employers that use SEPTA Key Card or participate in SEPTA Key Card Advantage. In the city, we have the highest percentage of our workforce enrolled.
Right.
Once we've pivoted beyond the enrollment, and we continue to do work in terms of improving our enrollment, we'd love to see every employee, and it's a little pitch to City Council, we'd love to see all of our employees, eligible employees enroll. But then it's registering, right? Once you enroll, we want to ensure that there's a registration, you have the card in hand, that it's handy, and that it's used exactly the way Councilmember O'Rourke describes, that we are making the city much more accessible. We are making the city as an employer a better value, right? And so for us, the measurement of success would include increasing registration and usage.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Next, I wanted to talk about the Operations Transformation Fund. I'm still good on time, right? Okay. I want to talk about the Operation Transformation Fund,
Yes.
which used about $10 million to fund nearly 30 projects across city government. The goal of these projects is to make government work better for people. Some of the projects that stood out to our office included giving 20 rec centers new computers, reliable internet, creating a reforestation hub, which creates jobs for folks to turn wood waste into reusable lumber products, and launching a mobile unit for the Office of Human Resources to go into community to recruit and to offer the civil service test in neighborhoods directly. Now that's government working for the people. Love to see it.
Yes.
I noticed that the CAO's budget discontinued funding for the Operation Transformation Fund. Can you explain why the city is no longer resourcing this kind of innovation in government when the people seem to want it?
Yes, so I couldn't agree with you more that that's government working for the people and for its workforce, absolutely. What we believe is that the budget that we have allocated for FY25 embeds that innovative work, embeds that attention to process improvement, embeds the enterprise resource planning that's necessary to do that same work. I think the Operational Transformation Fund was an extraordinary program, but it also taught us the resilience and the innovation and the expertise that we have in the city that we should be leveraging and baking into our budget moving forward. So I believe we have the resources. It's the same group that was using the grants from the OTF, that are working every day to better government. And the work of the Philadelphia Design Studio, the work of our strategic design projects within CAO, the work that is being done in partnership and in response to our Executive Order 02-2024, all of that work is that transformative work that was done under OTF.
And so you're saying those will continue because you're just embedding it.
That work, the work of transformation, working for the government, working for its residents and working for its workforce, that work absolutely will continue.
Okay. Am I on time? Do I still have time? Can I still roll? Or am I out? Okay, I'm gonna come back around. Thank you.
We'll get you for the next
Thank you, sir.
round.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Very kind.
It's
Thank
just
you.
fitting when you talk about government working for the people and initiatives like the SEPTA key card and the OTF grant that was provided as well, that also works on behalf of the people. It's like continuing when we talk about a safer, cleaner, greener, right? But we want to also make sure that last part, economic opportunity for everyone, like we're really hitting that part as a part of this budget process. I think it's great to have a safer, cleaner, greener city, but also those soft services that really support the most valuable citizens here in the city of Philadelphia. I believe most members of council want to see continue to be a priority as it relates to addressing poverty and the most critical needs of the citizens here in the city of Philadelphia. And with that being said, the chair recognizes Councilmember Rue Landau.
Thank you, Council President. Hi, thank you so much for being here. I am very excited about hearing about the streamlining of the hiring process. And I would like to start by saying, as a member of the Labor and Civil Service Committee chaired by Councilmember Jim Harity, we would love to help you. Anything you need. As a former city employee for 12 years, I see some of my good friends here, and the process is still so complicated as you described. I speak city, but most people don't, and I didn't realize how much I spoke city until I left the city of Philadelphia. So I went on the site last night and again this morning. what would it look like if I were looking for a job, and it's still as streamlined as we think it is, it's not. And so I would love to help if there's anything that you guys need.
Thank you.
That's a start.
Absolutely.
Couple of OHR questions. Especially about the civil service exams. So there's multiple issues here. One is, when I was in the city, a lot of the folks who were taking the exams were current city employees. We weren't drawing as many people, I think, not for your average, I'm not talking police and fire and stuff. I was talking about the internal jobs. There were so many city employees taking the exams. And I'm curious if you know the difference between, one, people who are applying for the first time versus current city employees, if you had those numbers. And second of all, what is the exam passage rate at this point? And do we know what the barriers are of having people pass versus fail?
I'll start on that, but I'm going to ask Janine Labletta, our Deputy for Hiring Services, to come up, so I don't misspeak on any of our pass points and how that works.
Thank you.
So we do know who's applying, and we have certain positions that are promotional positions. So there are several different types of positions. We have what we call open and competitive. There's open to anybody. So you can apply as a city employee. You can also apply if you're not a city employee. And then we have promotional positions, both citywide and departmental. They are focused on city employees. We do look to fill positions through promotion where we can. In fact, the charter does have some language around that. It's been interpreted differently over the years as to what that looks like, but we do defer to trying to promote within, and we feel that's a big retention issue too, from the standpoint of we're giving people not only a job, but a career, so that they can advance through that. As to the pass points, they change, and I'm going to ask Janine to talk a little bit about that, and the one part of the question I think I've forgotten on numbers, did you ask?
The two questions, one was how many people from the outside, non-city employees versus city employees, and then what are I know that each job's different, but general pass-fail rates, and why? Excuse me.
Hi, good morning, Council President. Good morning, Council members. Janine Labletta, Deputy for Hiring Services for the Office of Human Resources. Thanks for having us today. We are looking at pass rates specifically as we move towards computer-based testing. The Chief Administrative Officer talked about the digital divide. We can share some more specific data, but overall we've seen an increase in both showing up for the exam, which we talked about was a challenge, as well as pass rates. Right now, we generally have about 2/3 or 67% of our candidates pass, but that varies depending on the exam, as the director outlined. But we have looked by race and gender at the impact of moving to computer-based testing, and we can share that with the council.
Thank you. And again, my experience is slightly older at this point, but I wanted to share an experience and see if we fixed it. The DROP program was supposed to be available so that departments could plan for the vacancies. So you would know when someone was retiring within 4 years, and then you would be able to hire somebody to fill that position, hopefully get trained. But I found there to be a huge obstacle that you couldn't increase the number of slots that you had easily. So if you had, 10 slots, you need to increase it to 11 to bring the new person on in order to start training them before the person leaves, and you'd be back at 10. Has that system gotten any better and any easier? And do you know how many people we have planned on the DROP program now, to drop?
So the requisition process, that is city speak called the PER process, I do think we've gotten much better at that. I don't think they stay in stasis as long. I think we do try. If someone wants to bring somebody on board before someone leaves, that's primarily a financial decision. So as long as they have the budget to do that, we will approve what we call, for those types of positions, a dual incumbency, so that someone can serve in that role while someone is preparing to go out. The amount of time will depend on the job that you're looking for, so that will be variable.
Wasn't the purpose of the drop, though, to be able to prepare for the vacancies and to be able to train? It seems that it would be counterintuitive that we were hoping that somebody has the money in their budget, especially if the person who's going to retire is going to get that large lump sum. I hope there's a more streamlined way we can think of making sure we can onboard the other person first, give them some real-life training before the other person leaves.
No, and we do try to do that where we can. The budget is a determining factor. When the request goes through the process, one stop is the budget office. So they will look at that, and there can be conversations there. If it's a critical position, you can have conversations, and basically, I don't think there's usually too many times where we run into an issue, except if it's a very small department, that there would be a budgetary constraint. A lot of departments have vacancy allowances built in, so they have additional monies that are built in to take into account the fact that they're not running at 100% all the time. But I understand your point, and we can certainly have discussions also with budget to see whether or not this is something that's coming up more than what than I have eyes on from that standpoint.
Thank you. Council President, I have some CAO questions too, but I think you would ask me to save them.
Next round.
Next
Yep,
round,
we're going to get
okay.
to this round and keep rocking and rolling.
Thank you very much.
Next, the chair recognizes Councilmember Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. And just to Ruth's point, we're asking questions about all CAO, OHR,
For the record,
everybody.
under the CAO's umbrella is the Office of Procurement, the Office of Innovation and Technology, and the Office of Human Resources. You can ask questions of all three of those departments, as well as the CAO's office.
I'm
Thank
sorry,
you.
as well as the Office of Records.
Okay. Thank you for being here. First question for CAO is, what is the role of hearing officers and how do they work with other departments?
In order to answer that question, I'm going to ask Melissa Andre, our Executive Director of the Office of Administrative Review, to join us.
Good morning. My name is Melissa Andre. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Administrative Review. The Office of Administrative Review conducts hearings for several different departments and agencies throughout the city. Our largest subsection of hearing officers are housed with the BAA, which is the Bureau of Administrative Adjudication, and they mainly handle parking violations. But we also have hearing officers in another location who handles speed camera and red light camera, also administered by the Philadelphia Parking Authority. And then we have some hearing officers who do the Tax Review Board, which is, we take appeals for the Water Department, the Department of Revenue. So the hearing officers are all trained to be fair, equitable, and to listen to all of the constituents and the issues that they bring, the appeals. My hearing officers can deal with something as little or small as a $50 ticket for putting trash out too early, or $1 million tax bill from the Department of Revenue. They have a plethora of experience. I have some accountants, and they're really here to hear what constituents bring and what they want to dispute.
So they are a liaison of sorts. When you mentioned the Parking Authority, which is a separate entity, so who are they?
They are City
working
of
for?
Philadelphia employees, and they're hired to be objective hearing officers for the disputes that the constituents bring. So not a liaison, but a hearing officer, someone who makes a determination, and that determination needs to be carried out by the agency that was disputed.
I see. So they're the first stop before the person who's having the issue with the Parking Authority. They would first be heard by the hearing officer.
Correct. And then, of course, if they disagree with the hearing officer's determination, they can go to the Court of Appeals, the Court of Common Pleas or Municipal Court.
All right, thank you. Second question was about the positions in the OTF spending space. Were those people absorbed in other spaces?
A couple of the one of the positions, I believe, remains in CAO, but the other positions would expire. And so at the end of the day, we do have some vacancies, and our intention would be to retain the talent that we have.
Thank you. Then moving on to OHR, in terms of the decrease in funding to PPD for recruitment, is that been transferred somewhere else? That concomitant amount is somewhere else, or it's just gone?
Now, that funding was transferred to the police department, as I understand it.
So they're handling
that money will be managed directly by them. It was winding up being a very complicated process for them to do the planning for their recruitment, come to us for the payment of bills, and we requested that any funding for police recruitment, since they have their own recruitment team, be seated in the police department.
And is there oversight from your office, even though the money resides in the police department budget?
We work very closely with police on their recruitment efforts, so I wouldn't say there was oversight as to we have control over their spending, but we have a very good partnership with their recruitment office, and I think that's one of the reasons we felt comfortable in doing this. We didn't want to have a process that was mucking up the works just so there was this perceived oversight.
Right. And speaking about recruitment, you spoke about the fact that people make the initial inquiry and then there's no follow-through. There's also probably people, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, people who actually apply but don't pass the tests, right? I wondered if you are keeping those who actually came for the testing and did not make it through. Is there a pipeline of those people because they have demonstrated, wanting to be in the police force? Is there a pipeline to support them to remedy whatever it is they did not, were not able to pass on these tests?
So the police officer recruit is an unusual position within the city of Philadelphia, that the police department itself administers all of the hurdles that are required by the state. And the police department will do various initiatives to try to help those candidates move through that process. For example, I understand that they may be partnering with CCP to provide some reading assistance so that they have better pass rates when it comes to the reading test, which is dictated sort of by the state. They've run times where they've done partnerships with recreation to try to get people in shape so that they can do the 35 push-ups or the 1.5-mile run. So they do work with candidates to attempt that. And they do see multiple applications. People apply and apply. The challenge there, again, as I mentioned earlier, is they still get a lot of no-shows. And that's we pretty much have anecdotal reasons around that, but the police department does try to do a number of initiatives to help their applicants get through that and hold their hand through the process.
Thank you. And also wanted to ask about starting salaries in Philadelphia for our most understaffed departments. Are they competitive with other cities?
So we're looking at that now. We've just received a PACE evaluation, as I mentioned, that this is the first time in a really long time we've done a comprehensive pay study. We will be meeting with Finance Department to sort of go over that. We're doing the final edits on that evaluation that we have done. So what we'll be looking at, and we've done this in the past. For example, Janine Labletta's team in hiring services have made increases to our trades classes several times over the last half dozen years, trying to reposition them to be more competitive. So we do that on an ongoing basis in our maintenance our maintenance of pay plan.
Well, thank you. That was my bell, President?
Yes.
Okay, I'll keep my questions for the second round. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Councilmember Jones?
Thank you, Mr. President. Two things. Number one, I want to start by saying that a big ship in a big ocean doesn't turn quickly. So we're in the beginning of a new administration, coming out of an old administration, so that we don't hold you totally liable for anything that you may not have gotten done before the first 100 days, so realize that.
We appreciate that.
What,
Thank you.
what I would like to ask, though, is how many vacancies do we have within the city of Philadelphia, both civil service and exempt? While you're looking that up, what zip codes, and provide an analysis to the chair and members, what zip codes do the applications come from? So are there more parts of the city that are more apt, adapt, and able to apply for city positions than others? And if so, why? So I'm going to show you this member of work. You get your questions in while they're scrambling, and this way it doesn't hurt your clock. Okay? And I want to, while you're, do you have answers yet?
Sure.
Good.
Okay, so citywide, we have 6,297 vacancies.
Repeat that number.
6,297 vacancies.
Out of a total of how many potential positions?
26,734.
Which comes out to what percent?
About
vacancy?
23%.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
What zip codes do the applications come from?
So I'm going to defer to Mr. Zakagny, but what I will say is that while there may not be specific data on where applications are coming from, there was an assessment done upon which to rely on where to do recruitment activity, where we are not sourcing our community members and our residents who can benefit absolutely from the opportunities that are afforded in municipal government. And so based on that assessment, there is the zip codes, there was a determination of what zip codes would best be served by our outreach and recruitment efforts, or increased outreach and recruitment
I think
efforts.
it might be helpful to find out where they're coming from.
Sure.
And where they're not, and increase your efforts based on that as well.
Yeah.
What I want
Did you want to add anything?
Good.
So one of the things I would like to add, and I think I can take this one, and we shared this last year, one of the things that we did was when we identified a number of zip codes within the city of Philadelphia that had the most diverse, most financially challenged. And we've really, over the last year, focused on those zip codes with some of our community efforts and things.
Which are?
So it is 19121, 22, 33, 34, and 40. And we can share this information.
And I haven't heard 4th District zips.
I
but-
know.
Okay.
I'm
Duly noted. We can work on that.
Yes, like to be transparent. So we have information. We can probably get information on where applicants are coming from, the zip codes. Janine? I don't know if Ms.
Well-
Levada has some of that, but as she's walking up. So they're one of the things that we focused on. We saw a huge increase in applicants from those zip codes because they were ones that were lagging behind.
Hi, good morning. Janine Labletta, Deputy for Hiring Services, Council Member. That's on us if you don't know, but we are seeing increases in those target zip codes with our applicants, which is great to see. We can share that data specifically. We've looked year over year. And we also have overall certain zip codes lead with over 3,000 applications per year, for example. In 2023, we had about 55,000 applications we received. We have it broken down by zip code that we can share with the council.
Would you
yes.
share that with the president?
Yes, sir.
And members? Because not having the 4th District is a little bit of a shock to me. So I want to switch over because I'm sensing my bell is about to ring, or did it ring? Time check. How much? All right, I'll hear it when I hear it. In 2008, 3 individuals of this body were in different times. We were financially in peril as a city, and the relationship with the administration and the 4th floor was vastly different. And what they wanted to cut, we weren't willing to cut, such as libraries, things like that. So the response from the 2nd floor was, well, what do you want to cut? What things can we do better? And we produced what is called the Freshman 15, which wound up being the Freshman 30, which I'm going to give you. Where's my guys? Oh, there you go. The Freshman 30. And you can look at them for your own leisure reading. But one of them that I want to draw your attention to was the recommendation was that we convert to a paperless city administration. One instance we found that the state was reimbursing us for what we were doing with DHS, and $1 million check sat on somebody's desk for months, and the interest rate that we could have gotten if we'd electronically transferred it was immense. How are we doing as a paperless government? And you may not be able to have all of the answers to that, but that's something that we want to encourage. And back when I first started with the city, we had paper checks every Thursday. Now we have direct deposit. Those are substantial improvements to be more efficient. And I would appreciate if you could do an analysis on how we are doing promoting paperless use in government.
So I appreciate the question. Thank you very much. What we would like to do is get back to you on a
That's
project
fine.
that we've been working on, very much in alignment with being paperless, as well as the work that's being done with our digital work transformation group.
That'll be amazing. My final and my own, no, this is for the next round. I'm not going to ask for an answer yet. But what I'd like to know is how we're doing MBE, WBE, DBE in the city of Philadelphia. As many people may know, I used to run the Minority Business Enterprise Council, and I'd like to have on my second round teed up those answers of how we're doing by category: supplies, services, equipment, and professional services. Thank you, Mr. President.
You're welcome. The chair recognizes Councilmember Cindy Bass.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you? So I just had a couple of questions. I wanted to start on the bus revolution. What's our investment in the bus not the bus revolution, the key card program?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
The key card program? SEPTA.
What is the investment?
What's the investment?
Yes.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. I'm sorry, I didn't hear
Oh,
the
that's
question.
okay. That's all right.
For FY '25 would be approximately $9 million.
Okay. And I started to mention the bus revolution earlier because, as you probably are aware, SEPTA is in the process now of doing this sort of like, I guess in their mind at least, the right sizing of the transit system, which I won't even say in my opinion, which actually factually ends up being less service to currently underserved communities in so many different areas. And so I'm wondering if there's any conversation or connection between our investment and the service cuts that they're planning in the community. Has there been any thought, dialogue, anything from you all about, making further investments in this program and the fact that they are going to be cutting back service? Because when I look at it, everyone who receives the key card, it also receives a paycheck from the city of Philadelphia. And so, is there some is there equity in what's happening right now? That those who can afford to pay are being given free key cards, and I'm all for it. Just to be clear with everybody, I'm all for the key card program. But at the same time, how about expanding that to people who really cannot afford? And I know that that's not really your department because you're HR, but I guess I'm just wondering, are there those kinds of conversations happening that you're aware of, that there could be some expansion around this service?
So we've spent a lot of energy and a lot of our resources in trying to build up the program and its participation, right? Making sure that we have robust usage, making sure that there is equity across our workforce on who is accessing this, I think, really great benefit.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of energy around that, a lot of conversation around that. And so to the question that's being asked, there hasn't been a lot of conversation around leveraging that participation
Right.
into influencing, some of the decisions that are being made in terms of the services being provided throughout the city. But certainly, I think it's very much worth using our increasingly our increasing ridership, our increased participation throughout the workforce to do just that.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear you say that. I'm glad to hear that you all are, aware and think, and, at least beginning to think about leveraging. Because when you, look at the amount of investment that the city of Philadelphia makes in SEPTA, whether it's the Key Card program or it's, through the regular budgetary process, we have a lot of opportunity to influence what's happening. Sure. And it's my fear and concern that we're not using the authority that we have to really make sure that the people who aren't getting a city paycheck and the people who are really struggling and who don't have a SEPTA Key Card right now and who, like buying the SEPTA Key Card in and of itself may be a little bit of a struggle. Yeah. Like all of these things are really taken into account and trying to see how can we make our city better. And as the council president said earlier, economic opportunity really includes being able to travel and transportation. So,
I think between the investment that's being made towards our workforce participation and investment that's being made out of the NDO with the zero fare, absolutely, yes.
Thank you. The zero fare is great, but we also still know there's a lot of people who really are just kind of like out of luck and can't access the system. So just thinking about those folks and trying to figure out how do we make sure that we have a system that works for everybody. Procurement.
Sure.
So in the last year's budget hearings, we had a conversation. Former Council President Clark mentioned that there was a challenge with the procurement of equipment for departments, such as the Department of Parks and Recreation, when they asked for materials such as swings, playground sets, play sets, all that kind of stuff. And that these items were ordered kind of like one by one. And it made the time, the time to obtain these items, which is generally at least 3 to 5 months, if not more, because certainly during the pandemic, it was a lot longer than that. In which time, you've got a certain window to get it in. You've got to get the equipment in before the ground freezes and the ground's too hard and, it's not too rainy and this, that, the other thing. So it's really got to be, at a certain time that we can move on these like playground and projects and whatnot. And so I'm wondering, there was a conversation last year about purchasing these kinds of items in bulk, and there was no follow-up, there was no additional conversation. So I guess I just want to know what's been done to improve that process so that when we order, when we are trying to obtain things, that we're making sure that we're able to get them and get them in a timely fashion.
Good morning, LaShonda Tompkins, Acting Commissioner for Procurement.
Good morning.
Good morning. So from my understanding, the items are not bought in bulk because of the spacing that's needed to store the items. So that's why they don't buy in bulk.
So it's a storage issue?
Yes, it's a storage issue to store all of the items for the Recreation Department. I also have my Deputy Commissioner with here with me.
So let me ask, before you go too far, so we're saying this is strictly an issue of storage, or primarily an issue, I shouldn't say strictly, but primarily an issue of storage, because we got plenty of buildings. We got plenty of real estate in the city of Philadelphia.
Good morning,
Good morning.
Councilwoman Janine Burrows-Hill, Deputy Procurement Commissioner for Purchasing. So that is one dynamic. There are there are contracts in place. We have taken steps to meet with Parks and Rec on a monthly basis to be more strategic in our purchasing and to strategize the purchase by project, location, understanding the needs by playground. So we have made strides in making sure that projects are completed on time and ensuring that if purchases need to be had, that the contracts are in place. There are lead times. Just on the manufacturing side of things, metals were very hard to obtain, of course, and then, of course, pricing played a factor into that as well.
Okay. It seems to me that there could be a way to maybe speed it up just a little bit, because if you know, let's say for example, just in the 8th Council District, I know what playgrounds are under consideration, or, you know, we're working towards building projects within the next, you know, 12 to 24 months, let's say, that we'd like to have new projects happening. And so I can tell you where they are. And so knowing that these projects are coming, they are happening, to me, it seems like we could buy a number of, I don't know, jungle gyms or whatever you call them. We could buy a number of them at the same time, saving money, and we just need a place to put them. And I think that that's not a tall order for the city of Philadelphia.
Now, I mean, having all stakeholders at the table, I'm an advocate of forecasting across the board. So yes, I believe that that dynamic will help getting projects completed on time.
So are you doing that? I know we have Aparna Parentino, who's now in charge of rebuild, and and we have a new Seuss Lawson as the chair of Parks and Recreation. So are we connecting with them?
Yeah, so even prior to this administration, and we've continued to meet monthly with Parks and Rec to ensure that these initiatives continue, are timely, things are being ordered, contracts are in place. So there are initiatives in place to ensure that these projects are completed on time.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll come back, Mr. President.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Isaiah Thomas.
Good morning, Council President. Good morning,
Morning.
colleagues. I'm going to try to get all my questions in the first round, so if you guys can give me quicker responses, I could try to get everything in right now. Some of my questions were already asked by a lot of my colleagues, so I'm going to try not to be repetitive. Specifically looking at some of the HR issues, I'm glad to hear the advertisement and things of that capacity, but I'm wondering, and my numbers might be wrong, but you guys yourself have a 16% of your positions are not filled as well, too, right? Is that correct?
Are you talking about HR?
Yes.
Actually, we're up to now, I think it's 91 out of the 97 that we're budgeted now.
So we've made a jump there, but so what we're seeing as it relates to staffing in HR is not having a negative impact on staffing across the rest of the city, correct?
We continue to push out the projects that we need to do, but...
So it is having a little effect?
I'm excited that we're staffed up now.
Okay, got you. But when you weren't staffed up, it was having an impact on other departments across the city of Philadelphia. So can we anticipate, because you're staffed up, to see some expedited processes as it relates to people being hired?
Yes, I think that, like I said earlier, I really do think we're turning a corner. I'm excited about that.
Well, in your testimony, you talked about your goal eventually being 90 days to hire civil service employees. How can we get that number down to more like 30?
We would have to completely rethink what civil service looks like within the city of Philadelphia.
Can you give us something in writing that talks about what that process would consist of to be able to get city employees hired within 30 days? I'm just thinking about myself or my wife. If one of us were unemployed and it took 90 days for me to essentially be hired, you know, the average black and brown household can't go that long without an income unless they're on unemployment or something like that. So if we can just get us something in writing that tell us what that would look like. And even if something in writing says, Councilman, this is impossible, but if it were possible, this is what it would be, that would put us in a great position. On the procurement side, a few years ago, I was able to pass legislation entitled Keep It Local that really talked about local spending. Coming out of the pandemic, one of the things that we wanted people to do was invest in Philadelphia. How can we ask other people to invest in Philadelphia if we're not investing in Philadelphia? The previous administration has been great partners as it relates to staying in compliance with the legislation, and we've done so well to the point where as though we've had over 50% of city contracts go to Philadelphia-based businesses. Prior to the legislation, we had never seen more than 30% of Philly contracts go to Philly-based businesses. So clearly the legislation has worked well, and clearly the previous administration is excited about what we're doing. Your numbers talk about moving in fiscal year 2024-2025 to 25% of contracts going to MWDSBE businesses compared to 58.9% from the previous administration. Why are we expecting such a reduction?
LaShonda Tompkins, Acting Procurement Commissioner. Can you rephrase your question again? Can you ask
So,
your question?
our procurement numbers, and in previous administration, the Keep It Local legislation requires the administration to give a certain percentage of city contracts to Philadelphia-based businesses. In your testimony, you looked at reducing these numbers to about 25% for MWDSBE type businesses when the last administration was able to get as high as 58.9%. I'm wondering what's the hurdle to put us in a position to maintain the numbers that we had in previous administrations?
So the MWDSBE number is separate from the Keeping It Local number. So the Keeping It Local goal that we set for calendar year 23 was 46%, and we actually achieved 62%. So that's the Keeping It Local goal. So the MWDSBE goal is something that's set by the Office of Economic Opportunity, and that's at like 35%, but the procurement goal is overall for the city of Philadelphia. So our services, supply, and equipment includes all the services, supplies, and equipment for the city of Philadelphia.
So based on your testimony, where will our numbers be as it relates to procurement-based initiatives for Philadelphia-based businesses as well as supporting MWDSBE businesses?
So for the Keeping It Local goal that we're setting right now for 24 will be 47%, which is a trend of the previous 3 years. You just take the average of that. So for the MWDSB information, I will have to defer that question to the Office of Economic Opportunity.
Okay, so that's fine if we can get that answer right, and that will help. But I do think the 47% number is too low. I think that we can do a little bit better than that. I know that you're giving me basically the average of the last 3 years, but if we are trending in the right direction, it shows that each year we've gone up higher. So if you do the average of the last 3 years, it would suggest that we're going to be taking steps backwards. And, that's not necessarily a good thing when you look at some of the economic plights that we have. So if I'm understanding you correctly, your goal is 47%, but if we can reach a higher number, of course, we're going to try to attain that higher number. Correct?
Exactly.
Makes sense. Council President, I'm going to give you some time back, and I'm going to stop right there. Thank you for your support. I want to be clear for the record. Thank you, Councilmember Jones. I'm not asking for these numbers today because I know some of the things that we're asking for is a little complicated. It's going to require some type of research. What I am asking for, just for clarity, Council President, if we can get the information before we finish our budget negotiations. So when we consider voting on the legislation, we understand exactly what the admin wants to do with local procurement. That'll be very much appreciated. I'm going to forfeit the rest of my time, and I'm going to submit the rest of my questions in writing and hope that we get an answer for the rest of the questions before we finish budget negotiations. Thank you for your support, Councilman, and of course, thank you, Council President.
And Councilmember Thomas, I do think we are aligned in that we want to strive for robust goals to increase our local business participation. Absolutely.
Be clear, I agree with you 100%, and if I didn't, I probably would have another 5 or 10 questions to be able to push the needle. But I really want to commend the admin for not just keeping into compliance with the legislation, but recognize that when we invest in local businesses, it puts us in a position to allow our businesses to grow, mature, and do the best that they can. Philadelphia-based businesses are more likely to hire Philadelphians as well, too. So when we look at over 20% of the city living in poverty, this is our way to kind of indirectly put a dent in that. So thank you, Council President.
Thank you.
Anti-poverty plan, jobs. The chair recognizes Councilwoman Jamie Gaudier.
Thank you, Council President. I wanted to ask about overtime. I know that one of the results of having 23% of our positions open is increased overtime. And the city saw its overtime pay costs increase by 25% over 3 years to $258 million in FY23. In particular, police officers and firefighters have logged high overtime hours, which carries not only a high monetary cost, but a high risk of burnout and potentially dangerous scenarios where emergency services are not delivered at their highest level. So I wanted to ask, what are the anticipated FY24 overtime levels, and is there an overarching strategy to combat burnout among overworked employees?
So I'm going to address the latter. An overarching strategy, yes. We are committed to improving the delta, right? As Mike spoke to earlier, we are now realizing pre-COVID numbers, I think that's fair to say, in terms of the ratio of new hires to separations. And so we are trending in a much better direction in that space, making sure that our departments are staffed, particularly our departments that are trauma-informed. But beyond that, our overarching objective here is to create a culture that is attendant to not only do you have the equipment that you need to do your job, but are we creating a space, whether it's mental health support, or it's physical support, or it is development, training and development, that we're creating a culture of equity, EEO compliance, that will address some of the concerns. So when we put the two together, this is a culture of an expectation that the workforce is of value, right? That we're going to invest in our workforce, which I think that is very clear in at least the EO that has been published at the very beginning of the Park administration, and very clear in the strategies and the work that is being done out of CAO, that our overarching responsibility here is to create a culture where our employees can thrive.
How are individual departments supported in creating that environment that you described?
So one of the first things that I think is important is policy. Making sure that we are standing up policies citywide that are clear on the expectation of how we treat our employees. A citywide EEO policy that's going to be launched very shortly here, a citywide ADA policy that is going to be launched very soon. We are looking at different things citywide, such as the way we administer our sick leave. We are in continuous negotiations with our municipal unions about the benefits that we provide. And so there are a lot of things that go into this that are citywide and will also impact, of course, the individual departments. That is, to me, step one. And that support that an individual department or an individual appointing authority has to point to citywide policies and practices is significant.
Thank you. I'm glad that last year was the first year that we hired more people than we lost. But I was also wondering, as we go about the important job of continuing to fill these vacancies, what kind of assessment do we do by job type to make sure that the job is as competitive and attractive as possible? And the reason why I ask that is because in my work as a council member, I've had the opportunity to zone in on certain jobs. So for instance, when we were doing Just Services, PHL, and trying to improve quality of life services, we focused on L&I inspectors, and we learned that there were a number of things that made that job less attractive, from having to use your personal car to pay in the city versus pay in the counties. As we worked to advocate for more resources for 911 dispatchers, we learned that not only was pay an issue, but the ability to move up in the pipeline, as well as the amount of stress that those jobs carry. And I think you can go, job by job, whether we're talking about a correction officer, for instance, or other jobs within the city, and there may be very specific reasons why people are not finding those jobs attractive. So how are we going about, looking at each job and making sure that we're understanding our troubles with hiring, and that we're making changes to those positions so that we don't find ourselves in the same place?
Oh, thank you for that question. I love that question. At the end of the day, I think we probably can all agree that compensation by itself is not a determinant as to whether a job is considered to be the job, right? And employee satisfaction is not exclusively driven by compensation. Our FY25 budget includes a program called Qualtrics. That program, to me, has a very robust, it's an assessment tool, it's a survey tool, employee engagement survey tool. Our intention is to launch that citywide in May of 2024. We've already done an exempt employee run of that in September of 2023, and the output from that is very refined. It allows us to aggregate by position title. It allows us to aggregate across the demography of our city workforce. It allows us to aggregate by department, by age. And so there's a lot of information that we can extrapolate from that survey and those results. And it also produces a guide of sorts that appointing authorities will be able to use to hone in on where operational decisions or environmental or culture adjustments can be made.
Are we allowed to see any of that? I just want to understand.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So I will be able to share with you some of the results from the exempt workforce pilot that we ran in September of 23.
Thank you so much. Can I get one more or no? It's super quick. I just wanted to go back with my colleagues to this issue of the Operations Transformation Fund. I understand that you're saying that great projects came out of that fund that have been embedded in the city, but are we suggesting that we're like done innovating now, like that's enough, or is there another place where folks can go, our city workers can go, and agencies can go to support innovation, right, and the development of new services and new processes?
Right. So that is the work of CAO. We have the Cities of Philadelphia's Service Design Studio embedded in CAO. We also have the Strategic Design Group that works within CAO, right? So by no stretch am I suggesting that innovation stops. What I'm suggesting and what I know to be the case is that the work of the CAO includes constant reinvention, constant looking forward of our processes, our enterprise resource planning, to ensure that we are looking at innovative, transformative approaches to doing the work that we've been doing.
But I guess I don't understand that was a fund that people could go to resource these projects.
Sure.
If that doesn't exist, where do we go now?
They're coming to CAO because we are service-oriented, and departments can come to us and for example, I think it's the Digital Workforce Transformation team. If a department wants to digitize a manual process that exists within its processes and operations now, they come to us and we walk them through that, right? So not only are we doing the day-to-day work of managing services, but we're also providing service to our departmental partners.
So you think you have just as much capacity as you had with the fund to do that work now?
Well, we don't have the exact same capacity, but the work of the CAO departmental staff that was supporting the Operational Transformation Fund group or cohorts, those individuals are still within CAO. That talent is still within the CAO.
Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Thank you. The chair recognizes Councilmember Anthony Phillips.
Good morning. Thank you, Council President Johnson. The first question I have goes towards the Chief Administrative Office. I wanted to, just a quick question. Do you have community ambassadors within your department?
No, we do not.
No. And one of the things that your office is charged with is to make sure that services are high quality and streamlined for residents in the city of Philadelphia, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
So one of the things that all of us as city council members get hit on the head with all the time is about the importance of us being inside the community and listening to the community before we make decisions. You're ultimately I want to learn, how do you make decisions for the community around what should be streamlined, what should be efficient when it comes to city services, without inputting yourself into the community or having a budget line item in the budget that will reflect your community process?
Sure. I'm also going to ask Dwayne Gordon, my first deputy CAO, to join us. But what I will say is that the work that we're doing, particularly around the service delivery executive order, includes partnering with our community groups, soliciting input and feedback from the community. One of the wonderful things about the way the administration's organization is transforming is the creation of the different offices that are the touchstone to different communities within the city, and partnering with those offices as we develop the delivery EO, the delivery improvement process, is an essential part of how we're going to build out and improve those services.
Yeah, I just want to, it is your forecasting, right, in terms of what the future looks like, but your budget doesn't reflect that forecast, right, of who's going to be doing that particular work. Because it appears that we have an ivory tower approach to this work, as opposed to what you think the residents want, as opposed to getting it from the ground up. And what I know about Sherelle Parker is that she always makes decisions from the ground up. So I think that this is going to be really important, that we have a decision, we have a process in this budget, have numbers in this budget from your office that reflects ground up decisions when it comes to the residents' part.
So, Dwayne Gordon, First Deputy CAO. So one of the things that we've done over the past 6.5 years since I've been here is that we've worked hand in hand with a lot of departments. And so with that, some of these projects that we've taken on has been around how do we improve services that impact the community. And so even though we don't have the resources to be in the community as it stands right now, we work hand in hand with a lot of departments in that regard.
I just want to suggest maybe part of your budget amendment is to make those resources so you can be a part of the community. And because if you're not at the community meetings and hearing what I'm hearing about transparency when it comes to speed cushions, how are you going to evaluate the streets department? When you're not in the community and you're hearing about L&I and their response time, how are you going to evaluate the license inspections department? We're feeling the heat. Absolutely. I need y'all to feel the heat too.
Yes. We do right now. I will say to you that all of the work that we're doing to improve our services must include a component of outreach to the community, right? Yeah. Some of the work that I've done in the past includes a deliberative democracy model, whereas you not just survey, right? You're not just sending a survey out to residents, or you're not just paying them to complete a survey, but what you're doing is you're pulling them into cohorts, you're pulling them into spaces and having facilitated conversations around whatever the subject matter might be. Yeah. All of those options are part of the work that we're doing to improve service.
Absolutely, and I just want to ask this because I don't run out of time. For our Human Resources Department is also connected to community engagement. My question is also connected to community engagement because the reality is that there are 6,200 or so jobs that are available in civil services and so forth. But have we thought about innovatively how we can begin to take high school seniors who are now a lot of them not going to college, and potentially have a training center within our rec centers? I know we're doing municipal college, that's coming up, but there's other ways in which we can work to get these jobs filled that I'm not sure if we're taking a large level community approach to ensuring that people are prepared for that exam. Like, how are we preparing folks for that examination? And do people know that these trainings exist?
Thank you, Councilperson. We are trying to get out in the community more. We do actually hold events at times. We have to improve and increase on trying to help people process through our application process. And love to partner with your office to get some additional feedback from your office, as with other council people, on how we can do a better job at that. One of the things Camille mentioned is our mobile lab that we're going to want to go out into the community that will actually be a small piece of being able to help people actually sit down and apply for jobs, as opposed to just throwing them into a website. So we also partner with the school district and try to hold events with the school district, CCP, on how to sort of navigate our application process. It's still more that we have to do. So I'm not going to say we're doing everything that needs to be done. It's just a lot of work, and I think that we're going to see more of that as we move into the communities and have even more presence within the communities, and as we bring this body into what we're doing in the community so that you can also assist, make sure people are getting to our events even more than they have.
I very much appreciate the comment, and I think, much to your point, there is. I don't think that this any endeavor to improve service to our community can be successful if we are not leveraging the information from our community members who are experiencing it, right? There is room to, of course, have conversation about whether a specific individual or individuals who are embedded might be able to provide might be a consideration down the road. But we have built in programs and processes through the Service Design Studio, who created the Equitable Engagement Toolkit, right? And that toolkit was specifically meant to address things just like this. How are we as employees of the City of Philadelphia, how are we reaching out? What are the best practices on how we reach out? How we make sure that that outreach, that contact is equitable, that it's inclusive. And so we have built and we continue to build processes and protocols in our service delivery that address some of the concerns that I think you have.
Okay, just one last question, Council President. For the Office of Information Technology, we have a brand new chief. I'm excited for. Just wanted to ask, how can City Council better interface with the Office of Information Technology? What are ways that we can better support you in your new endeavor as the new chief?
Melissa Scott, Chief Information Officer for the City of Philadelphia. Thank you, Councilman Phillips. That's a really good question. We have a lot of new initiatives that we're bringing forth in the department. One of them would be recruiting. So I know that's a hot topic today. And maybe I think the suggestion of our CAO was great. We're working with the different council members to identify areas where we could attend career fairs, job fairs. We are in the process of hiring a new recruiter in our department to address our deficiency in our DEIs. So I think that will be a great opportunity to partner with the council members to identify constituents that qualify for different positions in our department.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The chair recognizes Councilman Kendra Brooks.
Thank you, Council President and colleagues here. Some of my questions were already asked, but I do have a few more. One is about, among city workers, men are paid more than women, and white workers make more than members of any other racial or ethnic group. In the 2018 Pew study, Black employees accounted for 81% of all service and maintenance workers. The job quarter category is the lowest median salary. On the other hand, Black employees represented only 32% of officials and administrators, wherein the median salary was the highest. How have these numbers changed since the last compiled data was published, and how is the city addressing this issue?
Councilmember, thank you for the question. We'd be happy to provide more recent data on our workforce diversity, what it looks like. I will say that the efforts that we are taking to, again, improve pathways within the city's workforce. And so we've spoken quite a bit about recruitment, but an issue that is, to me, is equally as important is what are we doing for the workforce that we have now, right? How are we empowering them now to make decisions, to acquire skills, and to move within the city's government? We have one of the most diverse workforces, but to your point, is that diversity being realized across all levels of government? What our intention here is with not only the work that we're doing with the executive order on improving economic opportunity, but the work that we're doing within CAO to focus almost exclusively in some cases on our internal responsibilities and creating more communication around pathways. What positions can lead to positions of higher responsibility, higher authority? What skills do you need to acquire? When should you acquire those skills? How can we support you acquiring those skills? We are doing a lot of work to make sure that we're positioning ourselves in a much more affirmative and proactive position to instill that information and convey that information to our workforce.
And one of the things you talked about was internal processes. And the reason why this question came up, because I have had several occasions with city employees feeling like the bar is moved just when they hit it. And primarily it's Black women that have been part of city agencies for multiple years.
Sure.
And then when they meet the max of their salary and it's time to move up, now it's a degreed position. When before they were there, that wasn't even an option. And I would really would love for you guys to look deeply into your internal processes, because these are things that don't go public. These are phone calls that we get from everyday city employees that have been faithful in working for the city. And it reduces the morale when you hit the peak, the bar has changed. And we understand that far too well, primarily for Black women in the workforce, and the city should not be carrying on these same efforts as well. So, as you look in those internal processes, it would be good if it's documented in a way for people to report such issues rather than, calling me or catching me at church.
Absolutely, yes. And we would love to work more closely with your office and share our endeavors in that space.
And my next question is about the work from home policy. So I'm concerned about the impact of the administration's return to office policies and the effect they can have on workers, especially caregivers and mothers. I know many people love to work the work that they do for the city, but need time saved from commuting and flexibility that occasional work from home provides to care for children and family members. And according to the studies, 1/5 of U.S. workers are family caregivers, and nearly a third have to quit a job because of their caregiving responsibilities. With the change in the work from home policies, do you expect to have fewer parents and caregivers working for the city? And how will this impact our vacancy rate and perspectives brought around the city's policy? And another part of that, the return for work policy has been discussed as a way to provide profits to center city businesses. Have you also examined the impact of the return to work policy on businesses outside of Center City where most of our workers live?
So we're looking at all aspects of return to the office work policy, right? We want to make sure that we are taking a holistic approach to this effort. To that end, there is great responsibility on our part, again, to create supports to all of our employees. Employees who have been working remotely and are returning, and employees who have been working without work from home as an option. We are looking at a number of benefits, and respectfully, I'm mindful of my responsibilities under labor law to have some of these conversations with the union, but at the same time, there's nothing that is off the table, right? We want to make sure that we are supporting our employees across the board, whether that includes creating additional benefits such as just-in-time care, things like that. So we are looking broadly at how we can mitigate any concerns, how we can increase value to our employees' compensation, and how we can ensure that as our employees return to the office, we have created a culture that supports them.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And you know, one of the things when I think about caregiver, I think about my own situation being, I'm in a sandwich generation. So you have aging parents that you are still caring for and responsible for their care and needs, but you also have young children and grandchildren that you're helping support as well. And we need to make sure that the city is taking into account that I'm not the only one with that story. I'm certain a good 25 or 30% of people in this room are a part of that same generations where we're caring for our parents and for young people in our family, and we need to make sure that we make it easier for folks that just aren't in administration and high-level staff. We need to make sure those same privileges are afforded to the folks that work underneath us as well.
Absolutely, we agree.
And my last question is, real quick, I know that David Wilson from President DC 47 had recently in an article talked about the removal of the hybrid will diminish the morale of city workers. And do you think that this change of policy would have an impact on morale or retention?
I think morale and retention is a multifaceted proposition, right? There are a lot of things that impact morale. There are many things that impact retention. I will say, if you look purely at numbers, during the height of the pandemic, when a more significant number of our employees were working from home, we had some of the same concerns with morale. We had some of the same concerns with mental health, over-scheduling, lack of direct contact with the supports that we need. And so we're taking, again, a very broad approach, making sure that we are creating a culture that is supportive of all of our employees, regardless of where they work, but more so understanding that there are concerns that have been raised relative to our employees returning to the office, and that we're being attendant to those.
Thank you so much. Have a great one.
You too. Thank you.
You straight. She said, have a good one. That's what's up. A lot of energy. So we are now officially into round two. Just had a couple questions. Part of the Parkers administration, the largest single proposed investment in the FY 25 to 30 recommended capital program is $280 million of new general obligation funding as part of a $500 million overall commitment for street repaving and ADA ramp reconstruction. And folks have been calling my office off the hook, wanting to be a part of making Philadelphia part of the safest, cleaner, greener city in America with economic opportunity for everyone, but particularly around cleaner and greener. What are we doing to eliminate barriers and increase opportunities for diverse businesses to have the opportunity to participate? I'm talking about the concrete construction companies, the black and brown and women-owned companies that go out day in and day out to do this types of work. And we know the typical folks like the Keatings of the world and other companies, they usually get this business consistently. So I know they kind of licking their chops because it's like business as usual, but we have an emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so what's the administration's plan to make sure that this $500 million over the next 5 years is equally distributed across the city of Philadelphia?
Good morning again, LaShonda Tompkins, Acting Procurement Commissioner. So what the Procurement Department is doing is we're working across departments to understand what their forecasted opportunities are. When we receive that information, we share that out at workshops, when we have workshops and events. We're also collaborating with the Office of Economic Opportunity on their monthly Doing Business in the City workshop. We do understand that some of the barriers are related to the process of completing the application, so we do provide training during that workshop on PHL contracts, which is the city's system for services, supplies, and equipment in public works, and we also offer information in regards to our e-contract Philly system with professional services, so to aid in that technical assistance piece. We also speak at different engagements that the chambers may have at the Enterprise Center and other events to ensure that we have open communication around any of the opportunities that are coming out.
Okay. All right, thank you very much. For the Office of Innovative Technology, Ms. Scott, can you please come back up, please? Just a couple questions regarding OIT. In your testimony, it cites that the increase in positions requested is due to the expansion of the city's video surveillance system and filling positions in public safety, innovation, the IT support center, OPAL, and departmental services supporting CAO and revenue. Can you just give us an update on how many positions that will be requested? And then also, I know some time ago, we did a hearing regarding surveillance cameras here in the city of Philadelphia as a way to address crime and public safety. And at that time, it was discovered that there was a shortage of individuals actually manning those particular cameras. And so hopefully this will be a part of that strategy, but can you give us an update on the number of positions that will be hired?
Currently, we have a vacancy for 75 positions. And as far as the cameras, we do need additional assistance when it comes to installing the cameras. Currently, there's 1,458 wired cameras installed. That's 835 for the police department. For our safe play zones, 283, illegal dumping, 247, and traffic, 93. We are planning to install an additional 200 cameras, which will bring us to 1,658 by July of 2024. We know that there is a increased council members would like to have more cameras installed, and we know that that requires additional funding. But what we currently have in place for FY25 would allow us to install 200 additional by July of 2024.
That's 200 additional cameras?
200 additional cameras, which will bring us to 1,658.
And do y'all have a rubric on how these cameras will be distributed per council district / city of Philadelphia neighborhoods?
So we do have record of where they are in reference to our safe play zones. In the recreation centers, there's 137, and then the school district, 146. And it's quite an extensive list, so I can definitely get that information through the chair if you would like. Or if you have a specific area, I can pull that out right now.
If you can give us the overall list, just broken down per council district, that would be very helpful.
Sure.
And it also give us an opportunity to compare about maybe a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago, members of this body stood outside of John Bartram High School, and we also did a significant investment for cameras to be placed around schools here in the city of Philadelphia, probably the schools that are most quote-unquote in high crime areas.
Right.
And so it'll be good to kind of compare what's actually been implemented versus what's being proposed as we move forward.
Okay.
So that would be very, very helpful. Also, in terms of Wi-Fi here in City Hall, per council offices and just overall inside the building, we know that you're working on a proposal to create a council Wi-Fi for city-owned devices and not personal devices. Can you just elaborate on that particular project? And then also just want to get an idea of currently, from my understanding, the process to get rid of old computers is that we put it out to bid for a company to purchase them and recycle them, and want to advocate to see if there's a way that we can donate those computers, which I'm pretty sure is in pretty good condition, to those who are most in need to help us bridge the digital divide.
So as far as city council is concerned, your services for your computers are handled by the Kimball Group. We can work in conjunction with them to see what we can do to make sure that we upgrade your computers, but we do have to work through them in order to complete that task.
Okay. That part I am aware of, just want to get an idea of what the status was, that's
I
all.
would definitely have to get back to you and get a response through the chair.
Okay, and then also in terms of OIT and the procurement department, in terms of how we put out old computers for bid, for recycling versus us having the opportunity to donate them to individuals and organizations most in need as a way to address the digital divide. Can someone just give us an idea on how can we go from having them go out for bid for recycling versus actually doing a moral good by donating them to organizations and individuals most in need?
So I'm not sure if this exactly answers your question, but through our fully connected organization or unit within our department, we have distributed computers to individuals in need. In addition to providing 23,000 households with internet access and some various other opportunities for the community. So I'm not sure if that answers your question exactly. There's a program, it's a recycling and refurbishing program. Within 2 years of funding through the DLA and OIT, we connected with PCs for People, and we scaled up devices by recycling them, refurbishing, and providing tech support. We distributed a total of 1,254 devices.
So for the record, we are donating computers to organizations that are most in need and individuals, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In your testimony, you also cited that OIT will initiate implementation of a complete software and hardware upgrade of the city's 800 MHz radio system. First, I want you to explain to me, what is the 800 MHz radio system? Scoping of the effort has begun with procurements to begin in FY25. As noted in the department's budget detail, the FY25 proposal includes $5 million in new class 300 and 400 funding. Can you please detail when this project will be complete and what is the budget for each year?
Okay.
Let's start with the radio though. What's the MHz radio?
So the 800 megahertz radio system is the primary source of communication through the fire department, police, and EMS. So it's managed and supported by OIT Public Safety Unit. The system supports 68 different agencies, so fire, police, prisons, Amtrak, and SEPTA, and over 17,000 portable radios. Includes 10 radio sites, 2 911 centers, 6 remote dispatch sites, and 76 radio consoles. Considered a mission of critical solution with the uptime being required of 99.999%, meaning less than 28 seconds of downtime in any given month. You asked another question. I do have an answer for you.
That's the $5 million in new class
Right, the
300 and
800
400
megahertz
funding.
radio. Yep.
And what will the project be complete and the budget for each year?
I would like to bring up Nadine Dodge, who runs she's the Deputy CIO for Public Safety, to answer that question.
Hi, good morning, Nadine Dodge, Deputy CIO, Public Safety. We are receiving $5 million a year to refresh the portable radios worn by fire, prisons, and police. That is $35 million total, so divided over those years, we'll be refreshing all of the inventory for those radios.
Question, why wouldn't this fall under like the police department's budget or fire department's budget and it comes under OIT? Just asking. The same way like we fund their body cameras, right, and other equipment that they're requesting, why would this be separate
Well, so the OIT manages the 800 megahertz system that historically. We work very closely with our police, fire, and prisons partners to make sure that we understand the priority for distributing those radios and work with our vendors to get them programmed and distributed. So I couldn't tell you historically why that falls under OIT.
Okay, all right, just was wondering. That's all I have. The chair recognizes Councilman Nicholas O'Rourke.
Thank you, Council President. I actually was in that same line, curious about, for Office of Human Resources, Class 200 budget decreased by $5.5 million due to shifts in funding for public safety advertising. Can you describe a little bit more the nature of the shifts itself?
Yes, so we had a number of... I apologize. You would think I would know that after all these years.
It's a serious matter. We want to hear the answer. Thank you, sir.
So we had a number of one-time funded initiatives that were in that are now out. The biggest chunk of that is the $3 million that was identified for police recruiting. Another big chunk of that was $750,000 that they took out, but we're getting $500,000 back to do the promotional campaigns. And if you look at the differences within the budget, I think there was a $360,000 for a one-time initiative for a data warehouse in our benefits group, and there were a number of others. I mean, I can give you those specifically. I'm trying to remember them off the top of my head, but all of those were sort of one-time funded. Now, as we need additional resources for recruitment, I've spoken with finance, and there is money in the reserve that was identified through the Recruitment and Retention Committee. So we'll be able to move that in as we need that as initiatives are developed. For example, we have two big initiatives, or two pilot initiatives around workforce development. Workforce development hasn't traditionally been a focus of the Central Human Resource Group, OHR, but we're trying to build that capacity there. We have a director of workforce development now, Natasha Brown. We're doing a pilot program with both JEDS and CCP to upskill internal candidates to for additional opportunities to promote them through additional positions. And that goes to improving our employees' workforce, having impact on some of the salary issues that you heard earlier too.
Thank you very much. I hate that you walked away with Office of Information and Technology. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask about the digital equity plan. When OIT published the plan in 2022, 1/4 of Philadelphia households did not have access to a reliable laptop or desktop, and 12,000 households lacked a home broadband connection. The digital equity plan launched several initiatives to work on the numbers: PHL Connected, Digital Navigators, PHL Donate Tech. Since the launch of those initiatives, well, we also know that President Biden's Affordable Connectivity Program is about to expire this month. The program provided deep discounts to Comcast and other providers to keep our most vulnerable residents online. With this program set to expire, how is the Parker administration preparing to fill in the gap?
So I'll start off by saying that we have a number of initiatives that we are moving towards, including expanding the reach of high-speed connections to within the city of Philadelphia. That process is undergoing the normal kind of contracting process, and so I won't speak to it very specifically here. But understanding that it doesn't necessarily replace the ACP benefit, it does improve our ability to reach our communities that are underserved and hopefully breach some of the divide that's the digital divide.
Thank you, Council Member. So the city will be conducting a significant outreach campaign along with Comcast to help people understand their options for when ACP ends. We will continue to support PHL Connected clients through our use of mobile hotspots and launched a paid media campaign, which is planning to launch shortly in order to help wind down ACP and let members, constituency know what their options are.
Hurts my feelings. I just wanted, there were so many takeaways, I think, from the pandemic years, that a lot of learnings about what people need and what is essential. It really unveiled, I think, our systems and things of that nature. And one of those that was really apparent was the digital divide. And I do think that it's really important that we prioritize whatever we can from the city to make sure that we are taking initiative, to make sure that we're not just letting folks off, but providing the bridge to that gap. I heard the bell go off. Does that mean my time is up? Oh, Lord. Okay. Thank you very much. Second, go ahead. During the revenue hearing last week, we asked about the city's effort to auto or cross-enroll residents in benefit programs like homestead exemption, the low-income tax refund, tiered assistance program for water, passionate about making sure that Philadelphians get the money that they are eligible to receive. Could you describe OIT's role in these auto and cross-enrollment initiatives?
Could you repeat the question, please?
Yes. During the revenue hearing last week, we asked about the city's effort to auto or cross-enroll residents in benefit programs like the homestead exemption, like low-income tax refund. The idea is making it easier for them to get the things they need. So I was curious if you could describe OIT's role in the auto or cross-enrollment, how you play a role in that particular process.
We will definitely have to get back to you on that. I can get a response to the chair.
Okay. Thank you, Council President. Thank you for your time.
You're welcome. The chair recognizes Councilmember Nina Ahmad.
Thank you, Council President. I had a series of questions for OIT, and I'll ask them all at once in interest of time. Is OIT working with LNI to improve the Eclipse system, particularly about communication with departments within the city, such as revenue, and also uploading things like environmental reports and all of that in order to be efficiently issuing licenses? That's one. We talked a lot about new surveillance cameras. What is the plan in place to actually check on these cameras to make sure they're working? And is there a repair plan for things in a very timely manner for that? And third is asking about the cell phone technology and the communication with the Public Safety Department. Is there been work done on that to improve that space? And finally, Class 200. There's a lot of resources allocated to outsourcing for your technology support needs. Is that something from past administration, or is that a capacity or a staffing issue? I think I'll stop here. There's one more question, which is a broad general question about how we are confronting the growing issue of artificial intelligence. My concern is mainly about bias that is embedded in AI and could be harmful to our most vulnerable communities, and including the ethics of using things like ChatGPT to generate public-facing work, communications, etc., from our city departments and elected officials. And sorry for the long list of questions.
Thank you, Council Member. So as far as LNI and Eclipse, we are currently working with them. There is working with Councilman Driscoll in order to fund $1.5 million, which will do an entire user interface over for the Eclipse system, but more importantly, it will make it ADA compliant. So that is the new project that's ahead. It will also fix a lot of the issues, well, not a lot, but quite a few issues as far as for permitting and so forth. So that's the plan for the Eclipse. Your next question in regards to the monitoring and then the maintenance of the cameras. So the cameras are monitored two ways. One way is through the police department, and anywhere from 2,500 eyes can be on the police department cameras at a time. The police officers have access to those cameras through their phones. And usually they access those cameras by way of a call through the dispatch, or maybe a detective needs to access the cameras. But then we have the illegal dumping cameras. There is a technology that they created an alert system around where the cameras are located. So if you have a ring system, it's similar to that. So if a car stops in front of the area, it will immediately alert the individuals on the other side, and then they would look and see what's going on in that particular area. So that's the two ways that the cameras are being monitored.
The question was about maintenance.
So, okay, and maintenance, I have that as well. So our maintenance for Class 200, which is purchase of services, is $85,331. Class 300, which is materials and supplies, is $64,129. And Class 400, which is equipment, is $870,000. That's what it costs.
I think I wasn't clear. I meant the maintenance of the surveillance cameras.
That's the cost of the maintenance.
Doing all this.
All three of those
my
are the
goodness.
maintenance of the surveillance cameras, yes.
All right.
I know, it's costly.
It's a big nut.
Yes, it is.
Okay.
You asked some additional questions.
Yeah.
I will definitely have to get back to you with a response from the chair for the cell phones. As far as the Class 200, I can answer that question. So this was actually definitely budgeted from the previous administration. We are looking for, and let me get this information out for you clearly. As far as recruitment is concerned, we've already started looking into that, and I mentioned it earlier that we are hiring a recruiter. But what is very important is skilling up our current employees. We need to take a better act in that, and what that means is creating training programs, certification programs, online learning platforms, and these are for our current employees. So when positions become available, they would then be able to apply for those positions by way of us skilling them and getting them prepared. That also includes cross-training opportunities, project rotations, coaching, mentoring, and continuous feedback and performance reviews.
And I'd also like to ask Dwayne Gordon, First Deputy of CAO, to come up and speak to what we're doing in regards to AI.
Thank you.
So in regards to AI, so what we did in the fall of last year is we partnered with IT, particularly the former CIO, Mark Wheeler, in putting together the city's first AI guidelines. So it speaks to what AI is and what it is not, as well as how it should be used and the impact of it. I believe the guidelines also touch on the impact it's going to have to city employees as well as those outside of the city. So since then, the CAO, we've worked with the law department to draft up our governance committee strategy and outline, as well as the task force framework. And so we've already had law review them, sign off on it. And so next steps, now that we have the new administration in, we have a new CAO, is to figure out how do we start to staff up on both the governance committee and the task force.
All right, thank you.
The chair recognizes Councilmember Jim Harity.
Thank you, Council President. Thank you, everybody, for your testimony. Just a quick, short one. For information, do we have any numbers? You know, our new motto is equal opportunity for all. And I know that it's a problem in neighborhoods like mine in Kensington, where some of our kids, internet is not a necessity, and it may not fit into the family finance. What are we doing to make sure that all our kids in the public school system have internet access for doing their homework and projects and stuff like that? Are there any numbers on that, on how many kids are still lacking that internet access or even the computer to do their homework on?
So we actually have a great plan in place. I am not at liberty to discuss. I want to bring up my chief of staff, who's also the attorney in our office, to see if he can talk any further about the agreement that we're currently in works. Steve Robertson.
Thank you. Steve Robertson, Deputy CIO, Chief of Staff with the Office of Innovation and Technology. What the CIO is referencing is, and you've heard it a couple of times, I think, in connection with ACP being discontinued, is that the city is exploring opportunities within the upcoming Verizon franchise agreement renewal to utilize rec centers and other areas within the city to provide high-speed, high-capacity broadband and internet. We see those as places where folks who are struggling to have home access or home internet, children can go there, avail themselves of the access that we provide there. I can't go into too much more detail, although negotiations have concluded with Verizon. The agreement itself is still kind of under internal review. We'd be happy to come back at the appropriate time when that agreement is before council for their review and consideration and talk more specifically about the terms.
Are we looking into how we can get the access at some of these kids' houses? Because some of these kids, once they get home, they have other responsibilities, like taking care of their brothers and sisters, and sometimes having to go to a rec center. And in my neighborhood, you never know if the rec center is actually going to be open. What are we doing for these kids? These are the kids I'm worried about, the kids that may not necessarily have the chance to go to a city facility in order to do their homework because, like I said, they have other responsibilities.
So through our Public Technology and Innovation Unit ran by Andrew Buss, we have made quite an extensive headway with our program Philly Connected. It's the city's initiative to help pre-K through 12 families access free and low-cost internet services. Thus far, we've made 23,100 internet connections as of April 2023 through Comcast Internet Essentials and T-Mobile hotspots. We also provided phone and text outreach through 126,000 plus households. We dedicated funding in the city's budget for 4,500 hotspots for pre-K through 12 students, households in need, and 1,335 residents receive help to get free and low-cost computers, similar to what I was mentioning to Council President, 200 in the first two quarters and 200 in the first 2 quarters of this fiscal year.
Are there any numbers of how many people are actually still without internet? I know that's probably hard to figure out, but
yeah, I'm sure it's quite a few more constituencies that we would like to reach with additional funding.
20,000 for a city of
ACP
a couple
leaving.
million is not a lot.
Absolutely, but as many residents as we can help get connected, we're definitely committed to that.
Now, do you think that's because people don't know about the program partially? Is that kind of why we're not seeing more people applying for it?
I don't want to misspeak or guess on that. I can get that response to you through the chair as far as why individuals why we don't have more individuals, because it could be a funding aspect or it could be needing more individuals to learn about the program.
Okay, thank you for that. And I just have one question for Health and Human Resources. I'm sorry. Can you tell me the 3 top departments that we're short in? Like, what are the top 3 departments that we need people for? I mean, I have theories, but I'd like to know.
And what I'll do is I'll submit the actual numbers, police, prisons, and probably fire.
Paramedics, right? Because fire, we're actually not too bad, but paramedics, the last number I heard was about 400 or so short.
Yes, we talked to fire about what that looks like because we are looking at EMTs, EMTA, paramedics. They're actually looking at a program right now to upskill their EMTs. EMTs are the position that we get the most numerous number of candidates, but then they have to sort of work up through that. So they're looking at a program to do EMTA training, and we're actually have had some discussions with them about whether we can do something. It would only be a small number and a long-term program about actually upskilling people to paramedics.
Yeah, the paramedic number really scares me because I met with the firefighters union when I first got in, and they said, hey, listen, we're going to check something for you before you leave. Make sure you remind us to tell you. So at the end, I told them, and they know I have a heart condition, so the guy says, hey, Jimmy, listen, don't take a heart attack in your neighborhood today, because while we do have 3 ambulances on duty, none of them actually had a EMT on it. They all had firefighters pulling overtime with their certification, which is a lot different. So they could give Narcan to somebody who was ODing, but somebody like me who would need a shot or something like that to get them to the hospital to stop the heart attack or whatever, they're not able to do that. And that's very concerning to me that an ambulance could actually show up to help you and then not be able to help you.
Yeah, we continue to work with the fire department on trying to come up with strategies to fill that void, especially with paramedics.
Yeah, I know it's specialty, so I know it's, there's a lot of training involved in it, but, it's something that's really needed, especially in the low-income areas. An area like mine where gunshot wounds are pretty regular, not having an EMT that could actually try to save somebody's life is kind of scary.
Yeah, and the departments I've referenced are probably raw numbers, not perhaps vacancy rates. It's the raw numbers that are sticking in my head.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Go ahead, young lady.
I was just going to mention that, we're trying to do a lot of work in terms of workforce development, and the paramedic EMT space is one of the places that we have identified as where, to the extent that we can, we want to leverage the ability to grow our own in some cases and upskill our existing workforce. So the work and the investment that's being made in workforce development hopefully has a very positive impact on situations like that.
Like I said, my son applied and he ended up getting a job making almost double what he would have made there in an actual hospital.
Yeah.
So I know we got to put up with that too, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Following that line of questioning, are we partnering with organizations such as like Job Corps? I know in South Philadelphia they have a very robust EMT program for young people. Have we taken that a non-traditional approach for partnering with paramedics, or would that be more for the Commerce Department? I know they're not here today, but I would think HR and the Commerce will be in conversation with one another.
I'm going to ask Janine Labletta to come up, and we do partner with Commerce. We just actually help fund one of their programs that they're putting together, not for paramedics, but with the workforce development funding that we had, we did a partnership with Commerce. So we do talk to them. We'll continue to talk with them very closely.
Good.
Yes, we don't partner with that particular organization. We do get quite a number of EMT applications. It's really the paramedic level certification. So we've been trying to partner with agencies that certify paramedics. But yes, we are interested in partnering with community or workforce development agencies that are training our paramedics. A lot of paramedics who train in hospitals stay with those hospital systems, so we have to find those agencies that are willing to cooperate with us to recruit.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I just think that's one from a public safety standpoint, particularly around the issue of gun violence. Very critical issue. Paramedics getting at the actual shooting scene in a timely manner plays a role in helping saving the life of the individual. So anyway, that Public Safety Committee, as well as myself and anybody else that has an interest around this particular topic, that we could be supportive in using our network and our resources to be supportive of your efforts, don't hesitate to let us know. because it's very, very critically important issue. The chair recognizes Councilmember Phillips.
Thank you, Council President Johnson. I just have one question for procurement. Great. What steps is the Department of Procurement taking to broaden the vendor pool for publicly funded projects such as rebuild, while now capital programs, thereby mitigating delays and addressing the recent surge in material prices?
So the procurement department partners with Rebuild, so when Rebuild has their outreach events and different events like that, we're always there. In addition, our Deputy Commissioner of Services, Supplies, and Equipment works with the Rebuild team so that we understand what is going to be needed on those projects so that we can get the contracts executed. In order to increase MWDSV participation, it is listed on our website, which is online. It's also listed on eContracts Filling as well. Contracts Hub, excuse me.
Well, no, it's great. I just wanted to tell you that when we were doing the Alany Rec Center, we had to do a lot of the marketing, for that particular project to really help, drive as many vendors to go forth and take advantage of that project. I just want to know, are you all actively having meetings, doing public awareness campaigns to get more vendors to apply online?
So that is definitely something that we can work on, increasing the participation on those projects. So if we can work with your office on doing that, or with some of the other council members, we'll definitely look forward to doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this goes back to, also another community engagement part. We're hearing that the city of Philadelphia is slow in this area, slow in that area, and I'm just trying to figure out, how we can hustle a little bit more, for our residents in those areas. So that's just important. And then I thought I said I had one last question, but you know what? That is it. That's all I have. Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
The chair recognizes Councilwoman Ketsi Lozada.
Mr. President, most of my questions were responded to through my colleagues' questioning, but I do have a question for human HR. I've read somewhere in your 5-year plan that there were about 177, I think, or so 170 plus positions that had salary adjustments. Can you tell me what were the titles of those positions? What was the adjustment? And of those 177, how many have either been filled or are still available?
Okay, we'll have to get back to you on some of the specifics. I'm going to ask Janine Labletta to come and to give you a general overview of what that looks like.
Yes, hi, good afternoon, council member, thank you. We've invested about $2 million in our healthcare medical titles recently. That would have been October, November of 2023. As the director mentioned, skilled trades, we've invested $2 million in adjusting salaries, particularly at the journey level, to attract candidates that are already working and specialized in the field to the city. Other increases that we proposed were to our fiscal and accounting titles, so attracting accounting capacity to the city. That was in 2019, 2020, but similarly several $1 million citywide in those areas. So we try to align our compensation adjustments with the 21st century workforce key fields, and that's what we've been doing incrementally.
And do you know how many of them have been filled already? Of those?
All of those that I mentioned have been approved.
What's the starting salary for one of those very entry-level positions?
I know our entry-level accountants are at about 56 or 58,000. Same for our entry-level engineers.
Okay.
Those were adjusted. Okay. For journey-level skilled trades, it was about, I want to say maybe $3,000 per position.
What is it, 40?
Per position, it's for journey level, they're coming in about 50,000.
Thank you.
And we can send you those specific pay ranges if you'd like.
That would be great if you can. And then my only question for OIT, we've talked a lot today about a digital divide. And there are many public spaces, recreation centers, libraries, community centers, that people depend on to be able to get internet access. But there are many, and I'm going to speak for my district, right? There are many rec centers, there are many libraries who don't have access to internet. How are we partnering with those facilities to be able to provide community residents with access? They are city buildings, right? They're city facilities. What do we need to do to ensure that those facilities provide residents with the internet access that they need?
Thank you, Councilmember. The Chief of Staff, Steve Robinson, just spoke a little bit about our efforts we're working on, but we're currently in negotiations with Verizon to bring, we're really expanding our fiber, which would allow us to bring the internet services to the recreation centers, higher speeds to the ones that currently have them and to those that don't. But we are working towards that, and we can provide a response back through the chair once we're at liberty to discuss the agreement.
If you can add to that response, how long it's going to take us? This is not a new conversation, right? We know that this has been an issue for many, many years. And over the course of the years in budget process, I'm sure that my colleagues have asked the same question. And so how long is it going to take us to get to where we need to be in order to provide community residents with the access that they desperately need in order to be successful and to apply for a lot of these positions that we talked about today?
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's it for me, Council President. Thank you.
Thank you. The chair now recognizes Councilman Rue Landau.
Thank you so much, Council President, and sorry I had to leave for a minute. I needed to get into a meeting, and I hear that some of my questions have been asked in some capacity, so I apologize if there's any repetition, but we did prep a lot. So I'll start with OIT while you're up here and then move on to CAO. So I think Councilmember Lozada was just asking about the Verizon franchise agreement. Is that right? And can you just real quick update on the status of the negotiations and how this agreement is going to support digital equity?
I'll bring to the podium the Chief of Staff, Steve Robinson, to answer your questions.
Councilmember.
How are you doing?
Good afternoon. So the negotiations with Verizon have concluded, but the proposed agreement and the terms in the agreement are still under a bit of internal review. We anticipate that agreement will make its way to council for their review and consideration. At that time, we'd be at greater liberty to discuss the specific terms, but that's the current status right now is that the ongoing negotiations that took slightly more than 2 years have concluded recently. So we have a proposed agreement in principle, and we'd be able to publicly discuss those once that proposed agreement makes its way to council for review.
Okay, when do you think that will be?
Hopefully very soon. I don't have an exact timeline, but hopefully very soon.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's see. I wanted to talk also about the broadband equity access and deployment grants, the BEAD grants. I know they're going to result in significant broadband infrastructure investments across the state, but Philadelphia isn't going to be eligible for any of that funding because the federal government is prioritizing areas that do not have existing infrastructure. So I know that Philadelphia is going to be eligible for funding through the Digital Equity Act funding. And it's going to be a competitive grant process. So other parts of the country are making investments in open access networks that would drive competition and result in higher speed internet at lower cost for households. Oakland, for example, has 10 gigabyte internet for $50 a month, and this type of network is being built across New York State. This would be a significant driver of economic growth. Understanding that federal broadband infrastructure funding will be going to more rural areas of Pennsylvania and not Philadelphia, we're at risk of falling behind. What would it take for Philadelphia to establish an open area network?
Sure. My name is Andrew Buss from the Office of Innovation and Technology. You are correct that many of the BEAD dollars will not come to Philadelphia, and that is because we as a city are considered to be served already. There are other funding streams we are watching. They are smaller than BEAD, unfortunately. So I think you asked about open access networks. The challenge there is the cost, I think. It's probably, if you think about Philadelphia, we're thinking about 100 million plus in terms of capital cost, and then there's the ongoing cost of maintenance. So I think that would essentially involve standing up an entirely new department or group who could manage that network. So, and I think a lot of those other places that are creating an open access network probably have other sources of funding or are in fact eligible for BEAD funding. So for example, New York State, probably there are a lot of areas that are considered unserved and they're using BEAD funding for that.
I'm going to have a couple follow-ups on that, I think, that I'll submit in writing. So I introduced a resolution 2 weeks ago calling on Congress to extend the Affordable Connectivity Program, which provides a discount for low-income people to get internet access for their computers at home. In today's world, access to the internet isn't a luxury. It's necessary for utility for families to access healthcare, education, workforce opportunities, benefits, and more. What options does the city have to support households at risk of losing internet access if the Affordable Connectivity Program is not funded by Congress?
Yeah, it's a very difficult problem. I think if you've been in the space working on it for a long time, as many of us have, this was sort of the greatest thing that's ever happened, was to have this Affordable Connectivity Program. And so the challenge is then losing it. I think what we can do as a city is what we are doing, which is essentially, and our CIO talked about a little bit, doing very much outreach about getting people to understand what their options are, which is essentially Comcast Internet Essentials. That's the cheapest option. There are other options as well. I think within the city, and what we want to do is continue service for our PHL connected clients, because we started that program in 2020. And our solution there is about 4,500 mobile hotspots, which we think will cover that pretty well.
Any possibility, my other question was about the mobile hotspots, any possibility of increasing those?
We would look at that. I do think, though, that we have a pretty good handle, at least on PHL-connected clients. My goal has always been to continue their service because we weren't funding internet for others beyond that program before Affordable Connectivity Program. But I think it is great to have Internet Essentials. It's generally an affordable program. It works pretty well, and that's what we'll be trying to drive people back to without the Affordable Connectivity Program. Okay. And then I would just say the other part, you may have mentioned this about Affordable Connectivity, was that it gave up to $100 for devices for a subsidy. We also have, and this has been mentioned a little bit before, we have a program done by PCs for people to refurbish and distribute devices within the city. So we're taking care of that side as well.
Excellent. Council President, I have a couple CAO questions. Is that okay? Okay.
Yes.
I have a couple more that I'm going to submit those in writing too. I realize I think I might be last, and this is not a good position to be in. Okay. So you talked about the Digital Workforce Transformation Program earlier today, and it's I think it's a great program. It develops online applications, improve administrative functions. And I know that you did work with the Office of Economic Opportunity that reduced the turnaround time for a step with departments must take to release RFPs, and it reduced it from 4 to 6 weeks to 3 to 4 days. You recently opened this digital workforce opportunity program to all city departments, which I'm super happy about. But can you elaborate a little bit more on what your objectives, successes, and plans would be, and what departments would you take priority in streamlining?
I would like to ask Dwayne Gordon to come to the table.
Can you repeat the question for me?
Yeah, I'm curious about who's going to get the priority for your digital workforce transformation program, which I'm very happy about. I love city efficiency, very important. Who's getting the priority, and what do you see as the outcomes?
So right now, we're in the early stages of determining that. And so what we have to do is just create a framework to figure out how we're going to look at the prioritization model and how we're going to look at the departments and any of their requests, and then figure out what makes best sense to start prioritizing that way, because we have to account for any type of resources, any types of gaps that we might find.
Okay. And I might skip that one. I'm going to go back and skip one CAO question because I wanted to get back to following up on some of the questioning that was happening around employee retention and flexibility. And I'm very happy that the city now has an employee ombudsperson to resolve some of these issues. And so I'm curious, I'm not sure exactly how this works, but I'm assuming, for example, if somebody had caregiving opportunities, like Councilmember Brooks was saying, the sandwich generation, and asked for a flexible schedule with their supervisor, and it was denied, is that the kind of thing that they could take to the employee ombudsperson to say, just, can you give me a double check to see whether or not this was an equitable denial?
So there's nothing off the table, essentially, with in terms of subject matter that can be taken to the employee ombudsperson. But to the extent that the ombudsperson is available to help facilitate conversation, somewhat regardless of what the subject matter is, yes, right? We want employees to feel empowered to have conversations that are difficult. And the employee ombudsperson is a space where that can happen, and there can be facilitation, there can be mediation where appropriate. So yes, to answer your question.
And is there ever is there space for the ombudsperson to step in when, for example, these other issues we discussed, somebody is applying for a promotion and is denied, and is questioning their denial? Is that another space where the ombudsperson could step in?
So there's a landscape of employee protection and community, right? The employee ombudsperson is certainly a significant part of that, but the city's employee relations unit, the city's labor relations unit, the Office of Human Resources, the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion are all spaces where, as a result of our work with the employee protection group, we wanted to create partnership, and we wanted to make sure we were closing gaps so that if something doesn't necessarily rise to being predicated on a protected class, there's still a space where we can go and have conflict or concerns addressed. So across all of those departments that are partnering with each other, the expectation would be that there is enough, it's not even an expectation, there is enough skill and there's enough knowledge across all of those departments to make sure that the department that's appropriate for attending to an issue, such as concern with a non-selection being based on a protected class, is addressed in the right forum.
Okay. I would just suggest, I'm glad you've got the pieces in place, and let's make sure employees know how to utilize them, where to go first, but that's great.
I think, I'm sorry.
I'm glad to hear that people are working together.
Yeah, the employee ombudsperson position grew out of this concern, right? That employees don't know where to go, and even post going to a location or a department that really is not specifically geared towards answering your concern, that there was no other place to continue the conversation and to seek resolution in some way that they're not otherwise empowered to seek. So it really is a nice vertebrae for employee protections. And Shakia Foreman, who has stood up this office, yes, beautifully, she has created something from nothing, is the right person at the right time, and will ensure and has the skill set to make sure that we are sending our employees down the avenues that are appropriate to have their issues addressed so that we don't have the frustrations that I think existed prior.
That's great. I am a big fan of Shakia Foreman's as well.
I am too.
Thank you, Council President. I'll submit the rest in writing.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of council for the Office of CAO and their various departments such as records, procurement, innovative technology, and procurement? Okay, hearing none, we will now have a recess until 1:45. We will finish our afternoon with the Department of Aviation and the Water Department. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
You're welcome.